Okay, so this is the evolving our pro-social culture in on September 22nd. And we are getting started here with Steve and Penny. And would either of you guys like to start off with the check-in? Looks like Steve is chewing.
You caught me just.
Yeah. Yeah, well, go ahead, Steve.
I can go, sure. Yeah, well, I'm excited to be here. I enjoyed the prior session I watched via recording. I'm associated with a couple of other projects. I got to the design school through Penny. We used to work together at the Conscious Business Initiative. And I read Joe's book, and I've been following that work with great interest for some time. I'm associated with a project called the Planet Project, which has got similar aspirations, similar values, trying to accelerate the shift to a planetary culture, the next stage of consciousness, as the way of addressing the meta crisis. And I have a 30-year career in technology in all different kinds of software development, software architecture, platform architecture, enterprise architecture, a bunch of roles. And about 7 years ago, I was activated to commit whatever I could do to help foster the emergence of a world that works for all life, rooted in a deep concern about the direction we're all headed, which I know is shared in this community. And so I long story short, downloaded a vision for a platform that could serve those that are on the forefront of the evolutionary shift. And off and on, been working on that platform. Been working on it a lot in the last couple of years, and it's getting close to a proof of concept. So I'm kind of excited to see that come into the world. I don't talk about it too much in these forums until I have something to show, but that just gives you a little background on me, since we hadn't met Anna and others. I don't know that I've introduced myself to the design school before, other than in my profile. So that's a brief introduction for me.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have you, Steve. And then would you want to, I guess we'll just pass it over to Penny, since there's only three of us.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well today. Glad to be here. I just sort of love this slow unfolding that we're doing in the pro-social work. So excited to dive back into our matrix that we started last week. And yeah, I'm getting ready to head off on this 6-week adventure. At the same time, processing a lot of I'm thinking about like my work here in Bodhicitta. How can I actually bring my healing work here? And thinking a lot about the on the ground work here, with the challenge of continuously leaving here for these activation tours and not being able to really learn the language. And so then there's the language barrier and all of that. But it's really been up for me lately, as I'm realizing how important it is to put my energy here where I actually am, rather than in cyberspace. So so that's what's up for me. And yeah, looking forward to this. A nice little threesome we have to do this today.
Yeah.
So Anna, how about you? How are you?
Oh,
after the retreat?
I know, I'm great. I just got back on Wednesday, well, like midnight on Tuesday, from a 5-day retreat in Colorado with in Paonia with Benji and Elizabeth Yari and Marta Esparza and Miracle, and just so many people who are design school members. And it was wonderful meeting them in person. I met Brad Sanders in person. I met Rita Marsh in person. So it was really wonderful to be able to see everybody's full body and really get to know them. And we did a lot of I think identification building of our group. We did a lot of purpose identification too, a lot of goal selection, and really honing in on what does it mean to be part of the Colorado River Basin and what's the potential of the place. So I'm going to be providing like an update too over the weekend of some of the things that we did. Benji also just recently shared an update on the retreat within the design school. So that's very helpful for people who are interested in learning more. But it was really quite magical. I enjoyed every second of it. So it was really wonderful. And I'm going to bring up my Miro board. Oh, and then I forgot Gwen Garcelone was also there too for a few days too, which was really great. She did a wonderful job facilitating some land connection practices.
Yeah, was that good that day where you went out to the?
Yeah, it did start raining pretty hard and thundering and lightning, which was, so it cut us like maybe a half hour short, but it was gorgeous. Like once we were in the car and dry, it was really wonderful.
Yeah.
Seeing everything, all of the rain getting stuck in the mountains, and yeah, it's my first time in Colorado, so it was really really a sight to see.
And how did it feel? Do you feel like you did some pro-social processes? Like did it feel?
Yes. So we did on the first day, I facilitated something similar to the ACT matrix, where it was, we kind of designed like 3 questions that give like an overview of the ACT matrix, where we talk about what does it look like if we're living out our purpose. Really diving into like the feelings and the experiences that we have with that. And then what are some things that can get in the way and prevent us from achieving our purpose, and like thoughts, feelings, experiences, and then how can we kind of overcome those barriers and continue moving towards our vision. And that was, we combined it with an art exercise, which was really interesting. I've never done that before, where we drew it out instead of just writing things down. And I think that was a really good starting point, because then we dove into more specific, like how are we going to frame this? How can we share this story with others? That I think Eduardo just did such a great job facilitating that.
Right.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of social to practices, just making sure that everybody is able to share their opinions, are included in decision making. So I think that there were like some subtle things that we wanted to be aware of, and that we incorporated more loosely into what we were doing as well. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm interested, Steve, if you're able to chat, what is your familiarity with Prosocial?
Yeah, mostly theoretical.
Okay.
I've read David Sloan Wilson's books.
Great.
I've been a longtime student and very interested in how we foster collaboration at multiple scales. And I find the prosocial core design principles to be a really, really nice framework, partially because they are derived from working examples as opposed to just being pure theory, right? They're distilled from what successful groups have practiced. And I've been involved in various attempts at governance and self-governance of groups. And so I have some scars from that. And I guess I guess I look at the prosocial core design principles as prescribing what successful groups should have, but not how. Right. So
Mhm.
you should have a shared purpose, but what is that purpose? You should have a shared identity, but how is that, how is membership in the group governed? You should have, monitoring, but how does that monitoring work? And what is, proportional response and blah, blah, blah. Right. So I think the practice, I think there's a body of practices that go behind that, which is what I heard you bringing in with the ACT matrix and so forth in an earlier session here. But I like that the design principles leave a large design space for experiments, right? So in my mind, it's kind of like groups can be aligned around shared adherence to the core design principles, but leaves them a lot of latitude for how they're doing it. And then so if they can share best practice between those groups and what's working and what's not, then we can collectively learn. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that, if it makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that's all part of the evolutionary component of it too, is it's really based on what works. We want to be trying a lot of different things. We want to be experimenting, and we want to be noticing what is most effective, what's moving us towards the purpose of the group, and being flexible in how we address certain things. So I'm going to share my screen, but I'm also going to share, I don't know if you're familiar with Miro. Okay, great. I think this one is, if you will need a Miro account to access it or to engage with the board. You can view it without one if you don't want to set up an account. Or you can just watch along while I share my screen. That's simple too. That's what some people were doing. So this is our shared Miro board. I put in a bunch of different matrices because we have, if anybody ever wants to do individual matrices. And this is my background. Steve is in contextual behavioral science. So I came through prosocial through acceptance and commitment therapy and the ACT matrix. And what we do is we usually use the individual matrix in a therapeutic setting. And it has all the same questions as just for the individual rather than the collective. And then this middle one here is the collective matrix that we can continue to work on. We started 2 already. And then I also have here all the way on the right are matrices that are associated with specific core design principles. And that's really where prosocial world has found that the matrix does best when you have it contextualized. If you do it very broadly, especially with a newer group, it can be quite difficult to focus on specific actions and really get something out of it. But if you're using it in response to the equitable distribution of contributions and benefits, it can actually it can help guide you towards making a decision on what kind of structure you want to have for your group. So that's something that I see us potentially doing in the future, and have those set up there. And for today, what we were going to do is we were going to continue moving along with this matrix that we had been creating to find the purpose of for the design school. So we had one initial one, and we were kind of comparing between this one, which we did originally about 4 weeks ago. And we had pretty much completely filled it in. It was fairly quick though when we did it. So it definitely, this one that we were working on to the left is a little bit more thorough, I think, and had more contributors as well.
Yep.
But we can just kind of review this one real quick, just so that we can kind of get an idea of what it is we were discussing. And then I also post pictures of this on within the Mighty Networks page as well. But we focused on like audacity and holism and truth and reality for our values, what really drives us. And that first question, so what matters most to us as a team, that's helping us identify our purpose. And then when we started talking about what thoughts and feelings might hook me or others and get in the way of moving toward our values, we talked a lot about techno optimism, so thinking that technology was going to try to cure the problem, feeling unheard, hopium, so like very general things, but also very like group specific things too, so like insecurity or timidness matched with greenwashing. I kind of ran the whole gamut. And when we compare that to what we were working on 2 weeks ago, as you can see, we have a lot more things that we were adding, but it does all have kind of that similar theme. I think that we were really starting to identify things like staying on purpose and integrity, valuing truth, providing mutual support, tolerance to differences. Those were a lot of our values. Whereas like confusion of priorities and overwhelm, burnout, or rigidity of perspective are some of the hooks that we're going to be getting in the way of us moving towards our purpose. So I'm interested in hearing what you guys would like to do. Would you want to continue, since Steve, you haven't contributed to any of the boards yet, would you like to continue kind of going through the values and the hooks, or would you want to start kind of just read through what we have and we could start working on the top of the board, which is what we were going to work on today?
Yeah, I'm fine with you guys continuing with the plan that you had to work on the top of the board. And I will just, I did get a chance to watch the recording of one of the sessions. So I got introduced to the process, and though I wasn't live, I did get a chance to, get a feel for how the process unfolded.
Great.
But yeah,
Did you watch the one with Joe was on there, or the other one, the second one?
One with Joe.
Okay. So that was the first matrix on the right, and you watched us go through that whole thing.
Yeah, that was yellow posted.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I didn't see the second recording, and so the distillation, just so I'm tracking, you started with the ones on the right, you got more contributions since then, you kind of distilled things out, and that's what resulted in the matrix on the left that we're looking at, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what's the significance of the color coding in that one?
They were just different people adding it. So you have the opportunity, or you have the option to use different colored stickies, and people were just using different colors.
Yeah. Okay. No worries.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that would actually be nice if we did start talking about some of the behaviors, because so when you look at the matrix, just for a quick review, the bottom two axes are thoughts and feelings, emotions, things that happen on the inside that aren't visible. So values, hooks, things like that. Whereas the top of the matrix is observable behaviors. What are we doing? What are we engaging in? And it's always good to be as specific as possible, so that we can be clear on what it is we're talking about, because some people have different definitions of a behavior that's a little bit more broad. But that's not to say that we can't also be providing more broad terminology for behaviors. And then the right side of the matrix is moving towards values. The left side of the matrix is moving away from your values, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all bad. That is one of the big things about ACT, is that we don't want to be labeling things as positive and negative, or assigning any moral value to behaviors, thoughts, feelings. They can get in the way and prevent you from living out your values, but they're also natural. They happen. And when we talk about what's up here in this third this third quadrant, when we're talking about how we respond to these hooks and things that might get in the way of us moving towards our values, sometimes they can be adaptable, sometimes they're maladaptive. It really is, we just want to be putting what are some responses that you have to these emotions. And then when we're done, we kind of take a step back, and this is that mindfulness practice of diffusing yourself from your thoughts. So you're taking a step back and you're noticing, and that's why it says noticing the difference in here, noticing what are the outcomes of our behaviors? How are we, when we're responding in these ways, what's most workable and what brings us closer to the life that we want to live? Sometimes it's very necessary to engage in these behaviors that are in this upper left quadrant because you need that to survive. Sometimes this side of the matrix is known as surviving, whereas the right side is thriving. And you kind of need to balance both of those aspects in order to live a healthy and productive life. And then the final question that we would then ask is, holding both the left side and the right side in mind, with awareness and self-compassion, how can we continue to move in the direction of what matters most to us? So that's finding those adaptable behaviors that are also taking into account those barriers that we're going to be coming into contact with. So I think that what we can do now is we can zoom in. I'm going to go over to this upper right quadrant, and I'll have, so what we want to do is we want to be looking at what we have written down in the away, here, and what are some of the responses that we have to things like overwhelm and burnout and capitalist pressures and lack of confidence. What are some of these things that we're feeling in response to these hooks?
So you want us to start on the upper left and not the upper right?
Yeah, that's usually how it goes, as you go in the clockwise motion. We don't have to, though. We can be flexible and we can jump over to the right if we're feeling more called for that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to move over to the right and talk about what behaviors we can engage in to move closer to our values first?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about this more in terms of purpose, like the purpose of the school. So, which would be like what we're doing, right? The behaviors.
Yeah.
What are we trying to do? So that's like, for instance, down there it says the being and doing a earth regeneration. What does that look like? So that's sort of where I'm feeling inspired. But it feels like I am not sure.
Yeah, no,
I don't
that's
know, somehow, yeah.
Yeah, it's totally fine to do them out of order, whatever we feel most called to. So let's start in the upper right corner then. So yeah, that's exactly that. What does it look like if we are living in line with authenticity and integrity? Or living in line with alternative economics. And we might also find that some of these things that are written down here in the lower quadrant are actually behaviors, and we can just move them up. That's kind of part of the process, is as we're going through it, we're noticing, well, maybe I'm trying to think of what might be. So like maybe communication and sharing of information and insights isn't really a value. That's more of a behavior. So maybe I might move that over here up into the top, because that's something that we're doing.
Mhm.
I'm actually just thinking about all the stuff that we did on the retreat, like um, supporting farmers to provide organic food to community. Um,
Mhm.
that's some even like our connecting farmers with resources, finding those leverage points and systems that can bring them more economic freedom, all those kinds of things.
Mhm. Hold on one second. I'm gonna mute.
Okay, how are you guys feeling about this so far?
I think I need a little more time. I want to like sort of refer a little more to the bottom things.
Sure.
If we could have a little more time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
All right, how about we take maybe 2 more minutes? You want, Steve and Penny? I see that Penny mentioned that she's feeling good. Um, then what I'm thinking is we can each share some of the things that we put up there and why we think that it fits in with our purpose so much.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Well, would either of you like to kind of share kind of you don't have to go through each and every one of your stickies, but maybe pick out a few that you think are really drive home the purpose and kind of share why you feel that way.
Mm.
I could start if you want.
Go for it.
So I think the sort of the central one that I put up here is that the humans are organizing. The landscape is organizing the human. The humans are organizing around the landscape, or at the bioregional scale,
Mhm.
guided by the landscape itself, and then that the sort of the main ways that we organize around bioregional learning ecosystems, creating like story of place, actively weaving stories of place, experimenting with alternative economic systems, experimenting with governance at this scale, at the bioregional scale, and I think like at the just applying the prosocial principles in these groups that we form as we're doing this, like as we're forming governance and those kind of things, and creating a culture of sort of like a combination of self-care with devotion to purpose. So like, having that balance of coming back to purpose, but also taking care of ourselves in the process as much as we can. And then the other big thing for the design school is facilitating the learning exchange across the network, the bioregional network. So facilitating that and creating the digital information ecosystems that we need to do that as well. That's kind of a summary of the things I put.
Nice. Yeah, I think I have some similar ones. And actually, I'm thinking that for what we can do in the next meeting, depending on how far we get on the upper left quadrant, we can start maybe have people come in and sort the stickies and kind of move them around and group them based on topic. I think that would be helpful to kind of distill what we're doing. But I think that we have very similar ones with common topics. Stephen, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I'd qualify a little bit by saying how do I put this? I'm being invited into a process of sort of specifying these actions or whatever from somewhat outside of the group. I've been in the design school for a little while, but I'm not currently involved in a landscape project, and I'm approaching it coming at it from a slightly different perspective. So I guess I just questioning my legitimacy in the exercise. That said, I've been deeply thinking about these issues for many years and resonate with the design school as I understand it. but not being on the inside of its development, I might not have as clear insight into its purpose as those who've been playing with it longer. But some themes that I, sort of identified as structurally, I think that notion of organizing around bioregions, a place-based organization. And I see that reflected in scaling that up to networks of networks that are structured bioregionally. I think the notion of bottom-up emergence, the way evolution operates rather than top-down design. So that includes scaffolding trust from the bottom up, from the person to building trusting groups, and then groups of groups in which trust can be scaffolded because of linkages between groups and so forth. I did throw something there about technology. This is kind of in contrast to the techno-optimism. Technology ought to be in service to life, not the other way around. That's kind of a value maybe, but it should be exhibited in the practice of how the technology is used and seen. I think you can promote sharing of experiences and stories and lessons so that these evolutionary experiments will get the maximum benefit out of the learning from those. Yeah, actively resolving conflicts and engaging in practices of ego detachment. So basically doing inner work individually and collectively as a group. Changing how we measure wealth. So instead of how many resources I've hoarded, it's what are the richness of the relationships and what are the flow capabilities that I participate in and that I've cultivated. The aligning collective action around shared aspirations. Basically, it's we're pulled into alignment by our shared aspirations as opposed to being pushed into alignment by top-down coercion. Yeah, and I like the phrase from the yellow stickies earlier. I mean, we're actually regenerating the earth. It's really important to that's the outcome of this. So I wanted to bring that in. I thought about putting actually and measurably regenerating the earth, but measuring then brings in sometimes just a purely quantitative aspect, and I didn't want to restrict it to that, so I left that out. And this little hidden note over here is fostering each living being to reach its highest creative expression. To me, that's what we're that's sort of the overarching goal, that if we focus on that, everything else kind of falls into place. And so I do think competition has a role, but I think it's to be in service to the well-being for all as opposed to the advantage of an individual or to accumulate power. So I guess that's how I would summarize.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, I think you are new to the design school, but I think you have a pretty good idea of our purpose for sure. I think a lot of what you said really resonates with I think the other matrix that we did, and yeah, it really it is definitely living out a lot of the purpose that was identified by other members who have been here longer, or who are more engaged. So I really appreciate your insight, especially coming from a very similar line of work too. So that's great. And I think so for mine, I think that one thing that continues to become a little more clear to me is that the knowledge and the care for our places already exists with a lot of people, with a lot of land stewards. And in so many ways that there's so many people who are already doing this work. And if we were just to be able to give them the resources and foster those connections and get them out of this kind of competition surviving mode kind of lifestyle, I think that that alone would make such a huge difference. So I talked about connecting farmers, or I guess it could just be regenerators in general, and landscape stewards with resources and networking opportunities, providing learning opportunities about different forms of alternative economies and tipping points and earth systems, and developing that digital ecosystem, like Penny said. So giving this the tools and the knowledge and the resources to people and letting them really live out what needs to be done. I really see us as being servant leaders in a lot of ways to these landscape leaders in their different bioregions. And I think that I noticed some of the things that Penny was typing too. So I think that you had mentioned having a incorporating healing into our practices. So I think making sure that we carve out space for inner work and healing conversations, having a place to do that and openly encouraging it, like we're doing within the Mighty Networks, is really important. Practicing and refining motivational stories, I think, is really how we're able to connect people a bit more, to keep them engaged when things get difficult. Having that alignment of story is so important, and getting people to see the bigger whole. Moving more emergently, so turning attention to where your energy is, flexibly holding goals. I think that that's really important as we're moving through this and we're experimenting and we're doing something that's never been done before. Is we want to get away from rigidity and really lean into this practice of holding everything lightly and being flexible, so that we can really make an objective decision as to what really works, rather than leaning on things that, we're going to do it because we've always done it, or somebody feels better about the way of doing something. And then just some more practical things like archiving bioregional information and sharing it with the community. I think that that's really a key feature of a lot of bioregional learning centers, is having that communication, support, knowledge, and things like that we're able to provide within those learning centers. Okay. So do you guys have any other things that you'd like to add before we move on to the next quadrant?
I think it's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get behind this.
Yeah.
We have a few things to do, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bringing in the connection to honoring the place-based wisdom that's already there.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I felt a lot of resonance across what each of us shared. Different emphasis, but a lot of convergence.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting once we start to kind of sort them and by topic, being able to actually delineate some goals and action steps from this. I have another sheet that I can add if we want to move forward with that, kind of determining where we might want to focus our energy to actually living some of these out.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that so we only have 15 minutes left. Maybe if we want to do 10 minutes of this left upper left quadrant. I don't know, what are you guys feeling most drawn to? Do we want to, because we could actually start sorting things too into topics if we want to do that now with the three of us, or we could move on to the other quadrant.
I
I think that the quadrant is looking awfully empty.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm feeling.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. So then, yeah, for this one, we're responding to what's immediately below it. And again, it can be what you perceive to be good or bad behavior. It can be adaptive. It can be maladaptive. Because after we kind of fill this up, then we're going to start actually analyzing whether or not these are helpful or unhelpful behaviors. And then we can kind of talk more in depth about what's most workable in that number 5. So. All right, if we want to finish up the last one, then we can do a quick recap on our stickies, and then like just check out at the same time. Um, Penny, would you want to go first again?
Sure. I'm just looking at everybody's and we all have the same. It's um I'm trying to think what to emphasize. I think just things like leaving, like people exiting when it gets hard, being diverted from purpose when so our actions get diverted into interrelational drama and then nothing happens in the Earth regeneration. Like sort of a rigidity in around like not being able to dance with emergence and overly critical and that kind of thing. And then just engaging in distraction and in order to avoid the feelings and isolating ourselves and from the land, from each other, etc. That's a summary, I suppose. And I'm doing well. This was great. Actually, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I find matrices to be very therapeutic. I mean, that's why they're used for therapy, but I always enjoy them too. Steve, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. I found myself, I feel like there's multiple dimensions to explore here and only explored some of them. I like what the two of you shared as well. Saw a lot of similarities. For me, it's about it's about self-care and community care together. So if I undervalue myself, then I can't be a good community member. If I overvalue myself, I can't be a good community member. So it's finding that balance. When I'm out of balance, then I tend to act out of, for example, self-interest instead of group well-being. I tend to react instead of respond. I found just putting verbs here without nouns helped. So passively resisting somebody else's ideas, passively resisting change, passively resisting emergence. Those all work. And then in terms of one of my life lessons, I call it idiots in power. When I look back at a lot of resentments I was carrying, they were rooted in a sense that, oh, those idiots in power didn't know what they're doing. And when I had to own my part of that, I realized I had had opportunities to exercise my own leadership and had passed on that. So when I started exercising more leadership, then I became an idiot. So that helped me have compassion. Anyway, so that's criticizing leaders while not being willing to exercise leadership. Being more focused on being right than being effective. And then hoarding. That could be hoarding information, concealing my agenda, hoarding resources of various kinds. So that's pretty much what I came up with.
Mm.
Yeah, and I appreciate the process too. I will say it's a nice way of getting a lot out in a short period of time with the mural board. It's a nice tool for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love the concealing of information and agendas because it's so directly is misaligned with things like being authentic and having integrity, which is a huge value of the design school. So I think that's a good insight. But yeah, mine is very similar. So I think a lot of it is, you know, misalignment with the purpose leads to duplicated effort, and actions that can undermine what we're trying to do as a group or hurting others. You also have kind of a fractured effort, and can potentially lose some really significant partners if you're not really being flexible, and you're letting your emotions get the better of you, and you're reacting rather than responding. And I also thought about like just engaging in our regular cultural practices in the response of some of these emotions. It's you really have to actively disengage yourself from the conventional culture if you want to be truly regenerative, and that takes um a lot of effort. It's not easy, and if you're allowing your emotions to get in the way of things, you tend to kind of backslide into just what's easiest, instead of trying to be a leader in a way that you're creating new cultural practices. And then I did also add in just taking time to relax and take a break, just because, like I said, it's not always those behaviors that aren't workable. Sometimes we need to take a break and relax, and that can also mitigate a lot of these thoughts and feelings, and might also be something that's related to the right side. And yeah, thanks guys for joining. We're at time. Steve, it was really great
Thank
getting to know you and hearing all your insights. I hope we see more of you.
You will.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
have a fantastic journey. That's
Oh,
I think that's really important in the world. And we're going to look back and that what you're doing is historic there. What
yeah,
everybody's
Mhm.
exactly. All of us.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you
You,
both. I
Anna.
gotta go. We're gotta go pick up Elise. So,
Right.
Okay.
Have a
all
good
right.
weekend,
See you guys
everyone.
later.